anytime you're looking at like, you're listening to other influences into your decision making, to ask the question, "Does this person have the results I want?" But right off the bat, doesn't it just, like, knock a lot of people's opinions right off the table?
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Demi Learning Show. This is Gretchen Rowe, and I am so delighted to host Mary Aldrich today. I have waited a long time for this conversation, and both have wildly busy schedules. And being able to share this conversation with you all is a very great privilege for me. I've known Mary for a couple of years now. And she's just tremendous. You're gonna find that out as we have this conversation today. By way of introduction, I'm gonna let Mary introduce herself, and then we'll get started in earnest. Mary?
Hi. Well, I am so excited to be here. First of all, I'm a huge fan of Demi Learning, and I have enjoyed Matthew C. in my curriculum growing, and my kids growing up and doing homeschooling and stuff. And it has just been it's been a staple for years in our house. So, a special love to you, and thank you for having me on the show. My name is Mary Aldrich. I am a mom of 7 kids. They are currently 14 to 24. So I have 5 boys and 2 girls. No twins. We often joke that when we started having children, we decided that we could either keep kids, pets, or plants alive, and we chose kids. And then when we got to 7 and 10 years, we were like, "Whoa, wait a minute. This is a lot of work."
I don't
Um,
know how you do that many. I mean, I have 6, but I spread them over 20 years. So
it was, you know, neither Brandon my husband Brandon and I, neither of us, do anything small. We are always very ambitious, and I think, this is no exception. But, having that many kids in 10 years, that's really where my journey began with kind of the coaching aspect too, because my oldest was 6 when I had my 5th child. I was not only a mom at home, but my husband and I were working full time at a Bible school then, and I was running the kitchen for the main facility. We lived in the main building of the property, so there was a lot of, like, feeling like I was on 24/7, kind of things, and as volunteer and outside work tends to go, I found that I was giving the best of my time to other people, and everybody at home kinda got the scraps, right? And so one day after putting out fires for other people, I came in and I don't even remember what my oldest child was doing. Jonathan at the time was 6. And I remember coming in, seeing him in the living room, I flew into a rage about whatever he did, and I threw him across the room. Like, just threw him, and, like, he did land on a couch. I that was not the intent when it happened. Um, and I feel like that was a day that we kinda drew a line in the sand and said, "We can either lose some of these jobs, get some help, or we can lose our children." I had just started homeschooling my kids, the older 2, um, and so the plate was just too full in order to be able to parent well. And so I dropped a lot of the volunteer jobs I did, and that is when I got a life coach. I had a friend who had just starting her business in life coaching, and I started coaching with her, and I didn't really see how it was gonna help. It was it like because I grew up in a big family, oldest of 8, my family homeschooled. I had already changed as many diapers as somebody does in a lifetime by the time I was married. I had already made meals for 20 plus people on a regular basis. Like it was so for me to say I needed help, like I'm not sure who else was out, like who's going to help me? I already know all the things. It was and it really was an aware, like my thought was I need something different to do. I didn't realize it was a thinking problem. So so I got help with a coach, and then uh it changed everything so much that I then had more margin on the other side to do other things. And so I kind of started a coaching business myself, thinking like other people need to know that this is possible. And so that's kind of how I got into it. And I've been coaching now. My professional coaching business is about 8 years old. But I was mentoring students long before that. I'm a homeschool mom. I've homeschooled everybody the whole way through except 1 year. I put them in school to take a break, and that was the year of COVID, and they came home anyway.
I've heard that story so many times from so many parents.
Right.
Um, and I did that as well. I In a 12-week period of time, I lost a baby, I lost my mom, and I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. And my husband said to me, "I have fired the children." I We only had 2 in school at the time, and I looked at him and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "You have no margins. You must rest." Well, I'm an only child and the daughter of good German parents, yeah? Rest does not exist. And so that was kind of crazy, but we did put them in. We agreed it was halfway through the year, so we were gonna put them in school for the last semester. The 3 of us, the kids and I, only lasted 9 weeks because there was so much crazy going on. When one of the things I most vividly remember is my eldest son had very asynchronous development. He was reading in he would have been a 3rd grader. He had just turned 8 years old, but he had a very late birthday. But he was reading at the college level, and because of that, they expected him to be able to perform at the college level, but he was still just a young 8-year-old, and
Yeah.
that dichotomy just didn't compute with the school system, and he was just lost. So, that lasted a scant 9 weeks, and, I needed the break, but I felt guilty for the break,
Or
and that was really hard, and I think often, particularly those of us in the homeschool sphere, feel guilty when we don't feel like we are pouring everything into our children.
oh, 100%. Yeah. Yes, I can agree with that. I think, you know, the reason we put our kids in school that year was because we had moved away from our job. We had moved in, and it was kind of a mission oriented position that we were in. So when we moved, we didn't have equity in a home, we didn't have savings, we didn't have there was nothing. And so my husband and I and our 7 children moved back in with my parents when I was 40 years old, so that we could get our feet under us and do something else. And by the time that process was over and we were in our own house and my husband had a job, I was whipped. I was just and so yeah, we put him in school, and it was a break that I needed. Um in that moment. And I think sometimes, people ask, like, is it okay? I noticed one person ask, is it okay to put my kid in school when while I'm tired or whatever? Everybody else thinks that it's a bad idea. And I don't think that there's one answer for everybody. I think, the other thing is if it's nagging at you, go try it. It's not a permanent thing. We put him in school. I got a little bit of a break in the first semester that I desperately needed. It was absolutely the right thing to do. And then the second semester, I learned real quick that I didn't want to leave him there. And so we brought him back home. It did good things for my kids at the same time. So I'm a huge homeschool fan. I think, I think it's the best thing out there. But I also think that part of rest looks like, taking advantage of some of the resources that we have in timely ways.
My husband and I always said that, we would do for each child what was best for them, and my 4 kids were homeschooled all the way through high school, and then kid number 5 said after his freshman year of high school, "I wanna go to high school next year." And I needed a 12-step program, but it was the right thing to do
Yeah,
for that child. He
right.
thrived in a high school environment. My youngest went to public school at middle school, and it was the right thing to do for that child. I also know that my 4 oldest kids would not have thrived in public school. 3 out of 4 of them are twice exceptional, and they really needed to be they needed the latitude that homeschooling provides.
Right. Yeah. Well, and don't you think, Gretchen, it kind of like goes into the college years too, right? It's like if we can just carry that idea on out. I'm watching that with my older kids now. I've got one son that went directly into the workforce, another son who wanted to work part-time and write a novel, one child who wanted to go to a Bible school, and then a daughter that's doing, she just finished her sophomore year at Liberty University in Virginia. Um, and then I've got a daughter that's hoping to go down a medical track, so we've spanned the gamut of how do you do post high school years as well. And you're right, it's not a one size fits all solution. And I'm so thankful that we have so many options.
Right.
It's that is part of what makes it restful, is recognizing there's way more options than we realize.
So,
And
Mary, how do we figure out I mean, sometimes we are surrounded by a community that thinks that the only option is to homeschool.
yeah.
So, how do you get the families you coach to
Hmm.
open up their minds enough to recognize sometimes that rest is a higher requirement than the academics of a particular year?
Yeah. So one of the things that we talk about right out of the gate is um anytime you're looking at, like, you're listening to other influences into your decision making, to ask the question, does this person have the results I want in their own parenting, in their own experience with this type of thing? Do they have results I'm after? If
Love that.
because
That is a really powerful question in a lot of guises.
Oh, absolutely, in so many areas. But but right off the bat, doesn't it just, like, knock a lot of people's opinions right off the table? Like, it just does. It's like, and it doesn't mean we don't love them. They can be family members and we love them dearly. It could be my own mom, and if she doesn't have the results that I'm looking for in that particular area, then why would I seek out her recommendations for what we ought to do? And yeah, so that's probably the top thing right there.
So, Mary, tell me about your journey in this coaching business because I have seen some results that you have done. Um, One of your mentees, I think is the term I want to use, is a good personal friend of mine. And I had not seen her in about 6 months. And when I saw her, it took me less than 2 minutes to say, "What has changed with you?" And then I found out it was you. And so,
Oh,
tell me about this.
I didn't actually know I had started a coaching business to begin with. I s- I I didn't just set out to become an entrepreneur and then suddenly build a company. I decided that I wanted to help women and moms um love their role. Like, to this is my purpose, and how can I enjoy this purpose that I have? And I saw that that was possible, and so I started a book club. It was a on the telephone book club, and we'd do a conference call and read a chapter and chat, and then I had enough people sign up that that were actually paying to be a part of the group. And I went to a conference to, get some more encouragement for myself, and it happened to be more businessy than I thought. And somebody said, "How many of you are entrepreneurs?" And everybody in the room raised their hand except me. And the person next to me was like, "You have a business. Did you like put your hand in the air?" And so I kind of, did the things to hang out my shingle, so to speak, of, "Hey, I actually am a coach." And then and got some additional training as that went on. So yeah, so I joined a program called the Covenant Coaching Academy, where they marry coaching principles with biblical training to get those two together. And yeah, just kind of have been just growing and learning ever since myself. As I did one-on-one stuff first, having one client at a time, but as I kept going, I really noticed that the book club aspect of being in community together brought a special it brought connection for the people in the group, as well as what I found is that people would bring up something that helped somebody else. Like the other person didn't necessarily know the question to even ask, but having it come up in the conversation, like, oh, that's the answer that I was looking for, but I wouldn't have even been able to articulate it. And so that group setting just really appealed to me. And so that I started Supermom School for that reason. And we coach every week. We have little small groups that get together every week, and we do some goal setting that is very unconventional. It's not the same as like your New Year's resolutions. But we really dig into what thoughts are driving the decisions that we're making.
Mhm.
You know, I like to call them strategic formulas for decision making. If we have math formulas that, we apply different ways. And so if we can come up with strategic formulas in our thinking for different decisions, then it kind of like takes the pressure off of some of the decisions. For instance, I'll give you an example. It's easy for people to figure, like, I've got 1,000 things to do today. How do I pick? It's not all gonna get done. So how do I pick? So one of our formulas for that is, what are your 2 things and what's for dinner? Bringing it back to like what I call a minimum viable product, the very minimum that you might get done today. If you got one thing done in the morning and you got one thing done in the afternoon, what are the 2 things you want to have gotten done by the end of that day? And it sort of helps focus in on the priorities, right? And then, of course, dinner, because none of us ever remember to get the meat out of the freezer until 30 minutes before it's supposed to be on the table. So we all that's part of that. What's for dinner? Oh, yeah.
I have often talked about how the world is divided into 2 ways, those of us who are fond of lists and fond of planning, and those of us who absolutely hate lists and hate
Sure.
planning, and
Yeah.
usually we marry each other. So
Yeah. Right. We talk about how this is about your thinking, right, too? So if you get your 2 things done that you set out to do, then you feel like, "Hey, I accomplished something that day." Like, I actually did what I set out to do, which is not a feeling that we as moms have very often. We made the list of 20,000 things, which is why people don't like lists. It and, like, no matter how fast and how hard I work, I failed by the end of the day because it's not all done. But a list of 2 things is accomplishable, and when you build a pattern of that over days and days and days, you build a evidence that you are succeeding every single day. And so you feel differently when you wake up because you have a habit of doing what you said you were gonna do. Uh, that feels so much better.
well, that actually speaks to the question of the mom who said, "How can I make time stand still so I can catch up?" It doesn't stand still, and in your kid's world, it moves even faster.
It does, yes.
She was humorous, she said LOL, but there is an element of real honest truth in that statement.
Yes, it really is. I think, the other thing about that statement is catch up to what? Like, I wanna make
Yes.
time stand still so I can catch up. But a lot of times we don't identify what does catch up look like? If I
Mhm.
was sitting in the state of being caught up, how would that feel? What would that look like?
It wouldn't last very
It
long for
doesn't last
me.
very
No.
no, and also I would propose that we get squirmy when it does. Because the truth is most of us are very, very much satisfied when we're living in our purpose. And our purpose is not to like sit down for a long period of time and just chill. Like that's we get squirmy in those moments. If you've ever been a mom that's like, you got a day off and it's been 3 months and you're like, I don't know what to do with myself. How do I
So in these last couple of minutes, what did I not ask you that I should have asked you?
one of the key things that we talk about that I think if I could say, like, is an overarching principle to this whole conversation that we're having is is the idea of I am a human being, not a human doing. And it helps drive my decisions all day to practice thinking about myself as being versus doing. I like to think of it like um people talk about like I'm a thermostat and not a thermometer. I decide where my values and what I'm committed to in like my character and my and who I want to be that day. And then that determines what else happens during the day versus I need to micromanage all the different ups and downs and things like that, much like a thermometer just responds to what temperature is in the room. And so that way of being is something we focus pretty heavily on. Every single week in our Supermom school, we talk about who do you wanna be this month for your kids? And so sometimes people will say, "I wanna be kindness," or um, I want to be restful," or things like that. And that so then when you say, "Okay, I need to crank out school today." Well, what does it look like to quote crank out school from a restful place? Like if I've decided I'm choosing rest. I think I saw one comment somebody asked, um, how do you get all the daily tasks done calmly? And what I would say is you've got to decide which is more important. Is the calmly more important or are the tasks more important? Because when the pressure starts to rise, you will put one of them over the other, and you have to decide ahead of time which is it gonna be. Like, "No, I'm gonna get the task done, and that means in order to do that, I'm gonna be like angry dragon mom to get it done," you know? Or, "I'm gonna choose calmness and peaceful communication even if not everything does get done." Um, so that I'm choosing to be calm helps create the life that we want over a period of time rather than if we choose the daily tasks we're doing in order to get there. Another way of looking at it is like if is be the difference between telling an artist to paint a landscape and they're going to go in there, they've got specific brush strokes and like the paint goes in specific places, but they're not doing a paint by number. Paint by number is like the doing. I'm gonna fill in this spot and this spot and this spot and this spot. An artist says, I'm seeing the whole picture. I'm painting a landscape. It's less about the exact preciseness of the brush stroke and more about at the end of the day, this is the picture I want to create.
Well, I have to be honest, I discovered that I was probably in my 40s before that even entered my stream of consciousness, but I find that sometimes I get jerked back into that because habits don't always leave us, and
Right.
particularly if the opposition would like us to have a habit that keeps us from peace, it's
Absolutely.
even gonna follow you around.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
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 Definitely. So it is a concept worth practicing every day, even if we're not good at it to, you know. It's a skill to live that way, and that does help iron out everything else in life when we choose it.
I
So, yeah.
use a little planner app that asks me on every Sunday, "What's the one thing you want to focus on this week?" And it'll say things like sleep, nutrition, rest, calmness, productivity. It gives you a wide variety of choices. Sometimes it doesn't give me enough because it gives me all those prompts and I have a different idea. But I do find that that has been really helpful because without that question of the one thing, I'd be picking 10 of them. Because when you're a type A personality, you're just a type A personality. That's the
Gonna pick them all.
oriented. Yep. Why not? Why can't we have it all? So, and we can with his grace, but not always in our own strength. So, Mary, I want to thank you for this time. We will have to do this again. This has been so valuable for and will be so valuable for so many moms. I'm sitting here thinking of so many homeschool moms with whom I have the privilege to interact who need to hear what you had to say today
Well,
because this
thank you
was
so much
terrific.
for having me. This has been wonderful, and I look forward to chatting again sometime.
Yeah, let's do it. Mary, thank you so much. Thank you to our audience today for allowing us to come into your living rooms. We don't take that privilege lightly, and I love the fact that you all enjoy the things that we serve up. I know this one was an extra special one, and I'll look forward to having a conversation with you all again soon. Take care, everyone. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thanks again for joining us. We're glad to be a part of your educational community. You can help us grow our community even more by rating, reviewing, and subscribing to the show wherever you may be hearing this. Don't forget that you can access the show notes and watch a recording at demilearning.com/show or on our YouTube channel. We'll see you again next time. Until then, keep building strong foundations for lifelong learning.